So it's official. We're going to get a playoff series between the Atlanta Hawks and the Philadelphia 76ers. And I honestly believe this is a series that can and will be entertaining. Because in the first round of the playoffs, both the Hawks and the 76ers showed that they mean business and that they are truly good teams. So in today's video, I'm predicting who I think will win this series between the Atlanta Hawks or the Philadelphia 76ers. The way it's going to work is I'm going to give some reasons on why Philadelphia could win the series and some reasons on why Atlanta could win the series. Then at the end, I'm going to come to a conclusion on who I think will win. Before we get into the video, I ask you to drop a like on this video as it does help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want weekly NBA content and social media goal of 1,000 subscribers. And comment on this video, start a conversation with me as I do respond to all of my comments, and play that intro. To start the video off, I'm going to give a reason to why I believe the Philadelphia 76ers could win the series. The first reason is the fact that Philadelphia is one of the best defenses in the whole league. And this is especially important since Atlanta is one of the best offenses in the league, and they showed in their first round matchup versus the Knicks that this is a team that can really score the ball. Philadelphia was ranked as the second best defensive team in the league, and that type of thing will really help them in a series versus the Hawks. And you might be thinking, good defense didn't really matter against the Hawks last series, as the Knicks were a top 5 defense, but the difference between the 76ers and the Knicks is the fact that the Knicks weren't really a team filled with a bunch of great defenders. They just had an amazing coach who had a great defensive scheme. But this Philadelphia team is filled with a bunch of great defenders as well as a good defensive scheme, and that's why they're ranked second instead of like 5th. And I think that will give Atlanta a lot of trouble, because a huge reason the Knicks lost that series was the fact that they had no one who could guard Trae Young, and because they were putting guys like Reggie Bullock on him, and Philadelphia is a team that could put many players on him, and many players can do an excellent job on him, as they could put the guy who's top 3 in voting for defensive player in the year race for him on Ben Simmons, who I think could legitimately lock down Trae Young at points due to the fact that Ben Simmons is so tall, athletic, and fast. And I think in that specific matchup, Ben Simmons is going to give Trae Young hell in the series. They also could put a guy like Danny Green on Trae Young. Danny Green's not going to lock him down, but Danny Green is still a smart and long defender who could do a solid job on him. They also have Matisse Thybulle, who is one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. I think he could do as good of a job as Ben Simmons at guarding Trae Young. I think he will have moments of absolutely locking him down, and I don't think he's going to play much in this series, but Joel Embiid is also a top 10 defender in the league and one of the best paint defenders in the NBA. So Trae Young's not going to be able to get off easy floaters like he did with the Knicks. And even if Embiid doesn't play, the 76ers have Dwight Howard, who's a good replacement for Embiid since he can still block shots as well. So Philadelphia is going to win the series. It's going to be because their defense was stellar and they made the Hawks offense significantly worse. The first reason the Atlanta Hawks can beat the Philadelphia 76ers is simply because in the series, Atlanta will have a slight advantage on the offensive side of the floor. Because during the regular season, Atlanta ranked as the 8th best offense in the league, and this was with many of their key players missing a bunch of games. And in my opinion, they would be top 5 if they were fully healthy. And this is a team with just so much talent. As we know, they have Trae Young, who in his previous series was averaging 29 points and 10 assists. And he just puts so much pressure on the defense, especially with his ability to draw fouls and hit timely and difficult shots. And although Philadelphia is going to make him go through a lot in this series with their defense, I still think he'll have a huge impact. But I doubt he'll be going as crazy as he was going against the Knicks. And besides Trae Young, they have guys like Bogdanovic, who is a guy who can create his own shot at a good level and create plays for other, and he has a phenomenal shooter. They also have John Collins, who didn't play horrible in the Knicks series, but he didn't score his usual amount of points. But a series like this, I would hope that he could be more aggressive and score more points, because if Atlanta wants to win this series, they're going to need him to step up. They also have a guy in DeAndre Hunter who was pretty solid versus the Knicks, especially on the defensive side of the floor, but he can also hit some 3-pointers and drive to the basket. They have Danilo Gallinari, who's a pretty inconsistent player, but he can shoot the ball at a good level and at times create his own shot. They also have Lou Williams, who's very inconsistent as well, but he's like a worse version of Trae Young coming off the bench with his ability ability to hit clutch shots and difficult shots and draw fouls, and he can make plays for others at a solid level, so you definitely have to worry about him. Kevin Huerter's a really good shooter who seems like he always hits shots in big moments, especially in that Knicks series, and Clint Capella is a very good lob target. So this Atlanta team is clearly just very talented, especially on the offensive side of the floor, and if they're going to beat the number 1 seed Philadelphia 76ers, I guarantee you it's going to be because their offense was clicking on all the cylinders. The second reason the Philadelphia 76ers can win this series is the fact that the Atlanta Hawks defense is not amazing. And yeah, in that series versus the Knicks, their defense looked pretty good. I'll give them credit. But that was versus the Knicks roster that was one of the worst offenses in the playoffs right now. And I had already predicted that Julius Randle and RJ Barrett would not play good in that series, because I simply didn't think they were players who games would translate well into playoffs. Check my prediction video, I swear I said that. But although Philadelphia isn't some powerhouse offense, they are still an above average one, and on some nights they can be a really good one. And this season, Philadelphia's offense was ranked as the 13th best in the NBA, which is above average, but not necessarily elite tier. But I think in this series versus the Hawks, there's a chance that they could turn into a great offense, because the 76ers are a team that have Ben Simmons, who I think the Hawks can actually put some decent defenders on him, and DeAndre Hunter and John Collins. And since Ben Simmons can't shoot, I think those guys can actually do a good job on him. But when it comes to Tobias Harris, I think DeAndre Hunter could also do a solid job on him. I think Atlanta would rather put him on Ben Simmons. But anyways, I think Tobias Harris is going to have a good series nonetheless. And Philadelphia just has a bunch of shooters that they can go to, and they can get on fire from 3, as they have Seth Curry, one of the best shooters in the NBA. They have Danny Green, who's inconsistent but still a good shooter. They have Furkan Korkmaz, who's a great shooter, and George Hill, who's a good shooter. So this Philadelphia team is definitely a team that can score the ball. And when you factor in that Joel Embiid is supposed to be playing, I don't think Clint Capella can guard him at a good level. Basically, no one in the league can guard him at a good level, so it's not really Capella's fault, but there will be some moments where Capella gets a stop on him or blocks him or stuff like that, but he's not going to stop him. And I think Capella could do a better job than most of the centers in the NBA, but I still expect Embiid to be somewhat healthy and dominate this series and play sort of close to what his usual self is. So if Philadelphia is going to win this series, it's going to be because Atlanta couldn't stop their offense and they couldn't guard Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, or Tobias Harris. The second reason I believe the Atlanta Hawks will win this series is the fact that in Game 3 versus the Wizards, Joel Embiid had a knee injury that didn't seem too huge, but it was later reported that it was a small tear in his meniscus. And Philadelphia claimed that it was a day-to-day injury, but I've been watching the NBA for a long time and I've never heard of a meniscus tear of any sort being a day-to-day injury. So I think there's a little legitimate chance that Joel Embiid misses over half the series or maybe even the whole thing, because usually meniscus tears can leave a player out for weeks, months, or even end their season. So I think there's a chance that Philadelphia might be lying about whether or not it's day-to-day, just so opponents don't know whether or not to game plan for Embiid. And if Embiid doesn't play in this series, it will drastically help the chances of the Hawks winning this series, since that means Tobias Harris will be forced to be Philadelphia's leading scorer. And even Tobias is an all-star player and all that, I don't know if he's good enough of a player to win a series as the main option. And even if he does play amazing, it won't be enough. He's going to need other guys to step up, like Ben Simmons. And maybe with Embiid out the paint more, Ben Simmons could do better, but throughout his career, Ben has always been a player who disappoints in the playoffs, so I'm not willing to put any of my faith in him to be a second option. But I don't think Joel Embiid will miss this whole series, but I do think he'll miss over half of it. And you also have to remember that even if he does return, he's probably not going to be at 100% right away since he's coming off injury. But nonetheless, Joel Embiid being injured, it sucks to see, but it will help Atlanta win the series if they can. The third reason the Philadelphia 76ers could beat the Atlanta Hawks is the fact that in the series, Philadelphia is the team with way more playoff experience. And you might be wondering why that even matters, but when a team has a lot of playoff experience, they know what to do in certain situations. For example, down the stretch of the game, they're less likely to fall under pressure, and they can stop momentum plays or get a bucket during the other team's run or something like that. And Philadelphia definitely has way more playoff experience than the Atlanta Hawks, as they have guys like Ben Simmons, who's been to the playoffs a bunch of times. Tobias Harris has been to the playoffs a bunch of times. Dwight Howard has, Danny Green has, Seth Curry has, and Joel Embiid had, and so has George Hill. Nearly everyone that they play, a significant amount, has playoff experience, and that's something that a lot of the Hawks players don't have, as Trae Young has never been to the playoffs, John Collins has never been to the playoffs, DeAndre Hunter hasn't been to the playoffs, Bogdanovich hasn't been to the playoffs, Kevin Huerter hasn't been to the playoffs, and the players that play for them that actually do have playoff experience are guys like Clint Capella, who I think will be good, but Lou Williams has always been a bad postseason player, and Danilo Gallinari hasn't been an amazing one himself. So I think Philadelphia can definitely take in that they have more playoff experience as an advantage, and I think that's a reason they might win the series. Third reason the Atlanta Hawks could win the series is simply the fact that outside of Philadelphia, the Hawks actually have so much players who could just randomly step up and play well in the series. They have so much offensive options, because even if Trae Young doesn't play amazing in this game or even the series, there's so much other guys who could score the ball at a great level and fill in for him. Because John Collins is a guy who was averaging 18 points and 10 rebounds, so it's not crazy to think that there could be a game where he goes off for 25 points. DeAndre Hunter during the regular season averaged 15 points, so there's definitely a chance he could go off for like 20 points. Lou Williams, we all know, is a certified bucket, so he could obviously go off for 20 points. Danilo Gallinari just last season was averaging 18 points, so he could definitely go off for 20 points. Kevin Huerter is a knockdown shooter, so it's not crazy to think there could be a game where he hits 5 or 6 threes and helps the Hawks win. Bogdanovich during the season averaged 16 points, so he should obviously go off for 20 points. And me saying all these guys should go off for 20 points isn't a stretch at all. Like, legitimately, all these guys can have a huge game. And yes, I know that every team has a bunch of players that can go off, but I honestly would predict these guys to go off. I don't think it would be that crazy. This is just how crazy talented this Hawks team is. So if there's ever a night where Trae Young will struggle, and I think there will be because of this Philadelphia's defense, they have so much other guys who can step up and help them win the game. I think that can honestly help them win a series. To conclude the video, I think the Philadelphia 76ers will win this series in 7 games. And the reason I think it will go to 7 is the fact that I see that Atlanta's a very good team, but I do think Joel Embiid will miss half the series, and even when he returns, he's probably not going to be 100%, which definitely scares me. But if Embiid was playing the whole series and missed no games, I think Philadelphia would win in 6 games, if I'm being honest. But worst case scenario, if Embiid doesn't play at all, I think I would go with Atlanta to win the series in 6 games. I definitely think this will be a close and entertaining series, and I'm definitely going to watch it. Anyways, guys, that's it for the video. Let me know who you think is going to win, the Hawks or the 76ers. Drop a like on this video to help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want weekly NBA content and towards my goal of 1,000 subscribers. And comment on this video so the conversation, as I do respond to all of my comments, and I'm out.